and we do these webinars every month, the third Friday of every month. It's really a way just to give people an opportunity to get a leg up on the job search process. We're going to spend the next hour, give or take, on some high-level training on resume writing, interview preparation, and teaching you some of the basics of how to find a job. We're going to leave room at the end for questions, and also after each module, there are 3 modules we'll open up for questions. If you wanted to pop a question in the chat box, please do. Yvette's going to be monitoring the chat box for us, and we'll keep track of those questions. You know, we do this as a regular thing. As an organization, we do this as a business. We charge for our job search training, and so there's other things after if you wanted to get interested in that, but this is really a condensed version of that. So hopefully it'll give you enough information that you can DIY, because that is one of our value propositions that we offer to the community, is giving you the tools you need to be better in your job search. One of our mantras is, I hope you don't need us, but if you do, we're here. So hopefully this gives you enough to get started. If you go to the next slide. Jessica.
There we go.
Thank you. So heads up, everyone, we are recording this. We'll be recording the entire thing from beginning to end, so you'll have the opportunity to re-watch this. We'll be posting on our website, and you'll have the opportunity to watch this or forward this on to people who you think this is valuable. They can get something out of it too. Next slide. Our focus for today, everything we do is in 3s and 4s. Our agenda, we're going to teach how to write a resume, high level, prep you for interviews, give you some job search tools, and there's also a section there on best practices. This is all very interactive. I mean, this is stuff after years and years of development on this team, but you guys all have your own perspectives on what's out there as well. There might be some things we'll touch on as much as we can, but if you have something that's relevant that you've seen in your job search, or a question that's come up for you that you want to hear more about, jump in, let us know what that is. At the end of the session, you should have tools for immediate and ongoing use, put you in the best position to get a job, more so than you were when you walked in, and give you an opportunity to network and make some new connections. As we go around, we're going to spend a minute going around the virtual room. If you hear somebody that's doing something that might be of interest and you want to connect, please do. It's a small world, and we know that everybody needs to be connected at some level. Next slide is a little bit about me. So I own this company. I started in 2018. I've been in the human resources field, primarily talent acquisition, resume writing, interview preparation, job search, outplacement services for over 25 years. A good part of my career was helping transitioning military, their trailing spouses, university graduates, and return to work parents with all of those baseline processes on their ability to get jobs. I'm also entering our Human Resource Association. I'm certified in HR, and it's just the kind of thing we're trying to do here to continue to build the business. On my team are Yvette Steele. Yvette, if you want to wave your hand and say hi. Yvette's our recruiting coordinator, and Bella Nichols, who is our marketing intern. Thank you, Bella. And then Jessica Carraro, who is my co-presenter today. Jessica, if you want to say a word about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Jessica Carraro. I'm a HR consultant at HR Office Savers. I started my career in HR as a recruiter, and I hope I bring some of that knowledge to today's webinar. I was an HR business partner for about 8 years in the corporate world before becoming a consultant. I'm a member of the Space Coast HR Association. I just became a board member there as well. And I try to be really active in the local community. So I'm a reading tutor for adults in literacy for Brevard, and very active in veterans charities. So the picture there is at a packing event for Forgotten Soldiers Outreach.
Thanks, Jessica. We do this training because most folks that we talk to, and I should frame it up for you, between, well, for me anyway, but for all of us, we've got hundreds of thousands of resumes we worked on in our HR career. That's a lot of paper to have touched, read, looked at, edited, helped people work through. And I can tell you that there's a very major basic theme, which is people, while interviewing or looking for jobs, is one of the most important things we do in our lives to sustain ourselves. It's not something we all look forward to, and we don't do it enough to be experts at it, which is why folks like us who have done it so many times do our best to help you improve. And that's why we're here. We want to give you these tools, learn how to get out of the pile, as Jessica likes to say, and then hopefully you get some networking techniques today as well. If you go to the next slide, we want to take another couple of minutes and go around a little bit. One of the other major themes of my business and what I'm really trying to promote is community involvement. You saw some of Jessica's information, education, which is what this is about, and also networking. We want everyone to have the opportunity to increase their network, to be better. We've all heard stories about finding jobs. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That's not completely true, and we'll cover a little bit of that today. But who you know is a part of that. So what I'd like to do is just go down the list. Everybody take just a couple of seconds. Tell us who you are, what's your current or most recent job. So if you're out of work, that's okay. What are you doing now? And one thing you'd like to get out of this training. If it's not covered today directly in the slides, we'll cover it later in the Q&A. So just allow me to call on you following my list. I've got Dana, if you want to just go first, who you are, what you're doing, and what you'd like to get out of the training.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dana. And right now I'm actually selling PPE to get by, kind of jumped on the bandwagon. My background is in retail buying. I was working for a small fashion company right before this, but before that, my last big job was with Office Depot. I was buying furniture for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Dana. Glad you're here. What are you looking to get out of this today, do you think?
I'm really looking to get some more resume tips out of this and how to trying to pivot, transition. Obviously, retail world's a little bit of a challenge right now. So I know I have a lot of transferable skills and how to have those skills come across in my resume.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Thank you. Next is Elizabeth. Elizabeth, if you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay, we'll come back to you, Elizabeth. Felicia?
Hi, my name is Felicia Stanley, and my current job is I'm a senior academic advisor at a local community college. I've been here for 12 years, and the one thing I would like to get out of this training is how to transition from the current company that I am in to another company, because I've tried for at least 3 or 4 years to get a higher position within my company, and that's not happening. So I would just like to transfer out to another company, whether it be a community college or a university.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the training. Glad you're here. Elizabeth, I think I saw you join back in.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I wasn't quick enough. Anyways, Elizabeth Bradley, calling in from Madeira Beach, Florida, the other coast from you guys. And I've met Jessica through a mutual friend of ours, Kelly, on Coffee with Kelly. And I thought I'd jump on because I think I probably need some help with interviewing skills. I recently applied for a job that I thought I was a great fit for, and I just really blew the interview, and now not quite sure how to handle dealing with the recruiter that I was with. Don't want to be a pest, but I keep applying for like similar type positions within the company. Mm-hmm. So my background is in, was in funeral service for many years, but on the marketing side of it. And what I would like to be doing is coaching and mentoring others in the area of personal growth and leadership development.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. We'll cover that today too. Thanks. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Next on my list is Susan. Susan, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and letting us know a little bit more about yourself and what brought you here today. Susan, you're muted, or we can't hear you. Sorry, Susan. You know what, we'll come back to you. I'm sorry, we'll come back. That's okay. Milagros.
Hi, how are you?
Hello, good. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jessica, for the invitation. I also met Jessica through Kelly Merbler. My name is Milagros del Valle. I am in the healthcare industry. My previous job was managing the imaging and infusion business for a gastro practice. I'm currently in between seeking for my next opportunity. And what I look to get out of this session is definitely just a refresher on interviewing, and definitely tips on how to enhance my resume as well.
Very good. Great. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And next on my list is Patrick.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I am an electrical engineer with 18 years of experience in the satellite systems industry. And my last job was with a small company that went under last year. And so I'm currently unemployed. And what I'm hoping to get out of this training is, well, number one, some tips on writing a better resume that might look a little bit more attractive to recruiters and potential employers, and maybe more tips about how to get past the applicant tracking systems, which are very difficult to get past sometimes. And any general tips regarding doing interviews, I'd also appreciate as well. I had an interview earlier this week and it didn't go well, but they asked me lots of questions on skills that I just didn't have, which I didn't expect them to be asking about. So there was no way. I wasn't right for the position to begin with.
Right.
I guess that's it.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And then Susan, do we have you? You have you on voice?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. There you go. Hello.
Yeah, there I am. I have worked very, very closely with Alan, and I'm always so excited to be part of this. My name is Susan Harwood, and I work for the Economic Development Commission, and we actually do a program called CPD. It's a Certified Production Online Training program that I actually mentor and I coach, and I work with the students during the 10 weeks of the online training program and then up to a year. And what my role is to get them employed into the manufacturing industry once they've actually gone through the 10 weeks of online training. So I also do work on some of the things that Alan does. I do some resumes, and we actually do private job fairs, private tours. And we've had the luxury and the joy to actually have Alan come and do HR workshops for our students prior to them actually going into their job fair. So we've been a real advocate. He's done an excellent job, and I'm always wanting to see if there's something new that I can learn from Alan, and I couldn't say more kudos about you.
Thank you,
So,
Susan.
yeah, thank you for everything, Alan.
You're welcome, and thank you. What the EDC does for the community and the CPT program in particular is really exceptional. For anyone who's local, you might want to explore the EDC manufacturing page on the website and learn more about the CPT program. It's really fantastic. And I'm not sure if you guys do this, Susan, but there might be opportunities to connect folks with other opportunities that are out there, because companies are always looking to hire. And if you're associated with the EDC, they do a great job of partnering with local organizations. Thanks for that. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for being here. We appreciate it. I took notes on what you were saying so we can cover most of what you asked about. Will be covered. Most of what we cover is high level, general stuff that's applicable to everyone in the workplace. As you're writing a resume, as you're interviewing, as you go on into job search, this is stuff that everybody needs to hear. But that's only a fraction of it. Most of what you might also need could be individualized or specific to you and your situation. So what we've also offered to do for anyone who attends the webinar, we're offering a free 30-minute consultation, which would include a resume review and a discussion on your job search and an opportunity to learn a little bit more about your unique situation after. So we can get with, if you want to put information in the chat, utilize the chat, in fact, drop your name, drop your contact information, put in a little bit more about what you're looking for. If you want a free consultation or you just want to be connected with us, mailing lists, newsletters, and get more information, make sure you tell us that in the chat. We'll be sure to keep everyone updated and have one of our recruiters or HR consultants get back with you to talk through your resume and your job search. You know, we normally charge over $100 for that, and this is just, well, it's 50 because it's half of it, but we're going to give that complimentary. So feel free, it's up to you. So with that, let's go through. We're going to cover each section in about 10 minutes or so, leave time at the end for questions, and we will get started. So let's talk about your resumes first. We heard that today. There's a lot of questions about resumes. what is a good resume? For a good resume to be considered good, it's got to be accurate, visually appealing, and content focused. I'm going to cover each one in particular, but I want you to understand that with resumes, there is no one size fit all. It just doesn't work that way. A resume needs to be compelling, number one, accurate. Think about spelling and grammar. That might sound obvious, but how easy is it to mistake a word like manger for manager, right? Spell check doesn't always pick that stuff up in Word, and your eyes don't always pick it up. And so you got to be careful, have somebody else review your resume. Don't lie. No one's going to lie. Well, people do, believe me. I've seen resumes where people made stuff up. But I promise you that stuff catches up to you at some point. So make sure that your resume doesn't have any misinformation between dates, company names, titles. Kind of assume that the person looking at your resume knows you already. And so write your resume in that regard. Next slide is about visual appeal. So visual appeal is about the font, the format, the eyesight. It's a little bit of art, but it has to do with using standard views on your resume that don't get caught in, for example, things like, I think was it Patrick was talking about the applicant tracking system, I think. So what happens is applicant tracking systems are computer systems, right? They're designed like anything else. So if you use Arial or Calibri with your text size of 10.5 to 12, those are fairly universal from computer system to computer system to computer system. And if you think about what that means, you've got your computer with whatever operating system and whatever font, text size, whatever that you're using has to go through some other ether something or other to get through somebody else's applicant tracking system onto somebody else's computer. Imagine how crazy that resume can be misaligned or changed through no fault of your own. So use the standards like Calibri, Arial, standard font size, keep it to 2 pages, maybe 3. I got one the other day, yesterday in fact, that was 9 pages long, which actually is okay if that's your entire bio, and then we put it down to a 2 or 3 page resume. But if you're sending out a 9-page resume, recruiters are receiving 40 to 50 resumes per job. If they're working on 20 jobs, they don't have time to go through your 9-page resume to get to the other resumes for the position. So be aware of what that looks like and what your resume can look like visually. And then if you're early career and only 1 or 2 jobs, you really only need like 1 page. Next slide. I want to talk about content. A lot of people have trouble with content because you kind of talk about what you've done, but you don't really say what it means and you don't get deeper. So look for a percentage. I'm going to play this out in a second, but look for features. I created this acronym myself. It's FRI, Feature Result You. It's a way to think about how you write your resume and how your resume should look. And this is how we do it when we write a resume. So if you go to the next slide, Jessica. The first one is feature. That's where you're talking about factual action statements about your job. What did you do and how did you do it? So just what did you do? I delivered a presentation. It's a feature. I hire people. It's a feature. What do you do? And use action verbs. Hire, do, run, deliver. Try to use real words that kind of set the stage. If you go to the next slide, this is where we talk about you. So what did you actually do? I delivered a presentation. That's a feature, not a result. So I delivered a presentation to 10 people to teach them job search skills so they could get better jobs, right? So what did you do and why did you do it? The first part about what did you do, every resume has that. It's basically a laundry list of what you've done, and it's like a job description that you just copied from. The result's a little bit harder because you got to think about what that looks like. I put some examples on the slide that include percentages. It's really important to make it frameable so the person reading your resume understands what that means. And if you can use a number, that's really helpful. I used 120%. Maybe you saved money from somebody. Maybe you delivered the product quicker. Almost every job has the ability to add some type of number to quantify your result in a way that speaks better of how you've operated. Because remember, you're dealing with 40 other people looking for the same job. What's going to differentiate you? The last part of FRI is you. That's where you talk about what the benefit was to the organization and how it helped you to be better. So I delivered a training program to 10 people. I taught them how to write resumes and look for jobs. And I was able to deliver the presentation on time and created a new slide that would help someone next time. So think about what that meant, because there's got to be some result on the you part about how that was an opportunity for you to improve and be better. That's our bullet on a resume. And if you can do that every time, feature, result, you, that's a compelling resume. You don't want to do 20 of those per job. You want to do 3 or 4 that are compelling and direct and legit. If you go to the next slide, we get this question all the time. And this is, again, a universal. I am anti-color in a resume. I find, and this goes back, again, I think it was Patrick who asked about the applicant tracking system. For anyone on the call who's ever been a manager, who has looked at resumes that came through an applicant tracking system or even just an email, some resumes get corrupted with gobbledygook. You know, the dollar signs show up somewhere, and the asterisks and the ampersands and other characters, like you're reading a comic strip that uses those symbols instead of curse words. That's how resumes come through sometimes because of color, bad fonts, things that just don't get read properly. So if you do a resume with like your picture or you put color on it, it looks really good, the piece of paper you're looking at, but it doesn't translate any better, and it certainly doesn't do anything for your content. So when we write a resume, we encourage everyone, simple, easy, bullets, bold, italics, just make it nice and easy for someone to read. And a big pro tip for y'all is send PDFs. Sending Word documents can also get corrupted with margin sizes and format sizes. PDFs is the best thing you can do to send your resume to keep it whole, if you will. And then just to summarize the whole resume process, I can't say enough about this no one size fits all. These are good generals, right? Keep your mind on a shorter, more impactful resume with compelling bullets, real information, but your resume and the other resume are not the same. One of the things that's really interesting that we talk to people a lot about is my friend, my coworker, my whatever that has a similar experience got this other job and this is their resume. Can you make it look like that? Sometimes we can format a resume that makes it look like one that you like, that's compelling enough in your mind, but it may not be compelling for you. And that's where the real trick of writing a resume comes in. But if you do nothing else, take some of these tips about the consistent font size and format, double check your resume for spelling and accuracy. Those are the things that'll kick you out no matter what else is in the resume. So with that, I'm going to pause for a minute or two, see if there's any questions about resumes while we're here together, and then we'll move on to Jessica for interview preparation. And again, we're taking questions at the end as well. Any resume questions anyone wants to jump in with real quick before we move on? All righty, Jessica?
All right, great. Thanks, Alan. So now we're going to talk about interview prep. So first off, why do we interview? What is the purpose of an interview? So from the employer's perspective, it's a way to evaluate competence and capability. So really, they're assessing if you can do what you say you can do on your resume. They're looking to see if you have the skills that are required, as well as, are you a cultural fit for the organization? An important thing to remember in the interview is you, as the interviewer, are also interviewing the company. So you want to make sure your basic requirements are being met. Is it in your salary range? Is it a reasonable commute? As well as being a cultural fit. Is this organization a good fit for you? Now, a few things that you want to have ready before you interview. We're going to talk about, there's a lot of factors that might be out of your control with the interview. You're not able to control how many people get invited to the interview, things like that. But you can control a lot of factors. So we're going to talk about those. First off, knowing your resume. Know what's on your resume. Even if you have someone else help you write it, make sure you really study it and know what's on there, because those are the points that the recruiter is going to ask you to speak to. Study the job posting. Make sure you really know what the job posting says and what they're looking for. Prepare relevant questions. We're going to go over a couple examples of those shortly. Review the company website. Both Alan and I have participated in career fairs where candidates come up and say, what do you do? They haven't studied our company. They don't know what we do, and that's really off-putting. So make sure you go on the web and study the company website, know what they do. Check your appearance. Take 10 seconds before you walk into an interview to check your appearance. Check your outfit, check your hair, make sure there's nothing in your teeth. I wrote down a stat I heard on a networking event this morning, Business Insider. You have 17 seconds to make your first impression. So remember that. Make sure you're presenting yourself well. And maintain a positive attitude. That's something that can be done by everyone every day of your life, and especially throughout the job process. It's incredibly important. Now, understanding bias. So bias is different than discrimination. Bias is something that's often unconscious. So an example, I had a hiring manager asked to not see any more resumes from a particular school because they had one candidate that didn't work out. And that's a conversation we had to have. Does that really make sense? So from your perspective as an interviewee, make sure you don't have any of those biases. Are you making assumptions because you don't like what the interviewer is wearing? You don't like how the office is decorated, things that are not really important. Just make sure you're keeping that in mind and being mindful of those things. All right, now we're gonna run through a couple standard interview questions that you're likely to get, and I want you all to be prepared for. First, employment history. So this goes back to knowing your resume. Do you really know what's on your resume? And can you walk through all of your experience and talk about it? Strengths and weaknesses. You are very likely to be asked to talk about your strengths and weaknesses. For weaknesses, one approach is to take something that you needed to learn more about and talk about how you did that. So I had a job, I had to use Excel. I was struggling with some of the formulas. There wasn't really any training provided at the company I could take. So I went home in the evenings, did some videos on YouTube to learn those formulas and taught myself. Was able to start using them in the worksheets I was creating and then teach other people that were struggling. So that's taking a weakness and turning it around. Why you were interested in the job. So an employer wants to know that you're interested in this position and you're interested in their company. You're not just applying to every job and willing to take any job you can get. Tell me about yourself. So we did a introduction at the beginning. You all introduced yourself. This could be seen as your elevator pitch. So most of you have probably heard of the elevator pitch. If you got 15 seconds in the elevator with a CEO, how would you introduce yourself? How would you talk about what you do and what you're looking to do? So, if you're comfortable with that, if you liked how your introduction went, great. If not, it's something that can be easily practiced. The more you can get on networking calls and introduce yourself and practice speaking, the better you're gonna get. It's something that can be easily practiced and you'll gain confidence. And what is your desired income? So this is a question I get asked so many times. So we're gonna do a slide about this. And please don't put down any of your previous companies. No matter how bad the job was, there's always something positive you can find to say. Now, behavioral questions. So you're likely gonna get a lot of behavioral questions. So at first glance, these are gonna appear to be yes or no questions. And they absolutely could be a yes or no answer. But I really wanna encourage you to not answer yes or no, to use these as an opportunity to give an example of your past behavior. So we'll go through a couple here. Are you a good problem solver? So you can tell about a time where you solved a problem. You should be able to think about an example, regardless of your industry, of that. Any problem taking direction? You can give an example of how you persuaded a supervisor to see your point of view in the past. So a lot of times interviewers will ask questions about a time you had a differing opinion and how you navigated that. So that'd be good to know how to answer that question. Do you consider yourself detail oriented? So tell about a time you made a mistake, caught it, and fixed it. And even go one step further and say how you prevented that mistake from ever happening again. Maybe you improved a process and put that in place and shared with your team. That will show so many wonderful skills. All right, now addressing salary. So I get this question so much. So I always recommend the transparent approach, complete transparency. Transparency builds trust. So you can say, I'm currently making this, I'm looking for this, or I've studied the market range, which is X to Y, and an offer in that range would be acceptable. So the recruiter is looking for a number, and these are 3 ways you can answer that question. Now, if you really are against giving a number, there are a few other ways you could answer the question. I'm open to negotiation. It's really the one people know and use. I'm sure a company with your great reputation is fair with compensation. And if I'm offered a position and the pay is fair, I'd be thrilled to accept. So I recommend the first approach, complete transparency. Ask questions of the employer. So for those of you that are currently interviewing, or if you've interviewed in the past, of course, you've probably been asked at the end of the interview, do you have any questions? Do not say no. Have a question, have questions available. So this is something you can make a list of ahead of time. Just think of as many questions as you can and write them down. You always want to ask a question. So even if your major questions have been answered in the interview, not having any questions can give the perception that you're not that interested in the job. So it's really important. So here's a couple questions here you can ask. So feel free to write these down and you can have them handy. How did the position become available? How did you get to your position? If someone in this position performed well, what would their potential career path be? Or you can follow up on a previous discussion point. If there's something they touched on you want to follow up on, that's a great opportunity to do that as well. All right, so we'll stop for a moment and see if there's any questions. Yvette, do we have any questions in the chat? I think you're on mute, Yvette.
No, sorry, I was saying no, not at the moment. We don't have any questions.
Okay, great, thank you.
Jessica, can I interrupt for a sec?
Sure, yep.
I cut Patrick off before. He had a resume question that I thought might be useful to go ahead and address for everyone, if that's okay.
Yep.
Yep. So Patrick, I'm just going to read it. Patrick has heard about this resume called a hybrid resume. I've heard a lot about it on job seeking blog posts and YouTube videos, especially it is the preferred, supposedly, excuse me, it is the preferred format by recruiters these days, and if done properly, can be ingested by ATSs, applicant tracking systems, more easily. I was wondering what your views were on hybrid resumes and how you would suggest they be structured. I love that question because part of writing a resume, and this is where it gets specific, by the way, the stuff we gave you so far and what Jessica just covered with interview prep is good general information. Somebody's asking in the chat about reviewing those questions. So Jessica, if you want to go back to those questions while I'm talking, sure, that might be helpful for folks. Yeah. So this is stuff that you can use. I mean, every single one of these slides, these are meant for a very general cross-sectional group of people from different, I mean, we've got people in different states here. We've got different people at different levels, different types of organizations or industries. That's what this is about. So Patrick's question about hybrid resumes, there are essentially two types of resumes, which the third is a hybrid. So there's a chronological resume, which is your traditional resume that goes year by year from your most recent experience to the farthest back experience you go. Some people say cut that off at 10 years, some 20. When we write a resume, We usually write it all the way through because you never know what kind of experience is going to be relevant for the next job. A functional resume is usually for people that do a lot of moving around from job to job, which can be a detriment when you're sharing a resume. It just looks like there's no stability. Or folks that have been career or industry changers. We write functional resumes a lot for return to work parents. They've taken 5, 6, 7 years off to be at home, be a stay-at-home parent to take care of their kids. Now they're going back. They have all this great experience from 10 years ago that they don't have now. So we'll eliminate the years and the dates, and we'll write simply a functional resume that talks about their specific skill set of whatever they've done that's relevant to the types of jobs that they're qualified for and they're going after. A hybrid resume is really both of those. It highlights the way we write them anyway, because there's a different people have different points of view. Our hybrid resumes, the first page is a summary of who you are and what you've done, big picture, and we do that for everyone. And then your functional piece. So if we pick on Patrick for a second, I'm going to make this up a little bit, Patrick, but you're an engineer, you said 15 years, I think, satellite stuff. So
Yes.
Patrick's resume might have 3 sections. One is engineering. One is project management, because I assume you've worked on different types of projects, possibly even led some delivery of some projects. And the other one might be, if you've done team leadership or management, we'd say team leadership or management, or it might be operational if you've been a part of a group. But we create 3 sections that talked about the type of work that Patrick's done to summarize it on the first page with highlights of accomplishments. So not just summary stuff, not just I was a satellite engineer or I ran a team. It was real numbers, dollars, values, all those things we talked about before on the resume with percentages and dollars. The second page would be a chronological view of the companies and positions and education and other relevant pieces, associations, affiliations, local community involvement, with or without dates. I don't know, we'd have to get more specific. Any of those can work depending on you. I don't think part of Patrick's question is, does that get me past the ATS system? It's not going to get you past the ATS system any more or less than a different resume. It's really about the functionality of the resume itself, the fonts and the formats and the lines and the colors and the pictures and all those other things that kind of mess up the integrity of the base of the resume. It's really about readability and telling your story better. So hopefully that helps you all think about a little bit the type of resume, and then we can get deeper, Patrick and anyone else, on a consultation after if you'd like. So thanks, Jessica, for letting me jump in with that.
Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Awesome. Great question.
Sorry, Jessica. Dana had a question that I wanted to go ahead and in the chat that we got while I'm talking. So she's asked, for salary, given the circumstances of the job market right now, has the salary conversion shifted at all of being more open and not giving past salaries to not be priced out?
You want to take that out?
Yeah, sure. That's another great question. So Felicia, we teach.
No,
and
it's
we
Dana.
advocate.
Dana.
I'm sorry, Dana. My bad. Sorry. Hi, Dana. So we teach and encourage full transparency. So there are certainly opportunities to not share prior salary. I mean, if you were working, part-time at the laundromat for $8 an hour for the last 3 years while you just for a flexible schedule, and now you're going back to your CPA accounting job at $80,000 a year, that's probably not something you want to bring up, and it's not going to be as relevant anyway. But generally speaking, you should share. And let me pause for a second. Places like where Patrick is in New York City, you're not allowed to ask people for their prior salary history. That's no longer legally allowed. It's a discrimination situation state by state. Florida has no such law. I can freely ask you what's your current salary, what do you want to make, and just get into it without any concern. But some states have a limit on that. So if you're calling in from a different state, make sure you know your state law. So Florida specifically, I would encourage, say it, because it's true. You have nothing to lose. You really don't have anything to lose by saying it, because it is what it is. So from our perspective, it's because the same question, Dana and team, is going to be about, I lost my job in March due to COVID. So there's the stigma that you haven't worked in 6 months or a year, or I got fired or terminated, the company went out of business. There's these different moving pieces that go into it. We are big believers and advocates in it is what it is. So it's more about expressing it in a way that doesn't put you in a bad light. Sure, in my last position, I was making $45,000 a year. I know this job is paying a little bit more because I've done my research, and the real the range is somewhere in the 60 to 65,000 range. So I'd be looking for a salary that's more in line with the type of position that I'm going for and what my experience is. And if you frame it in a way that explains where you've been, that's what we advocate. I hope, Dana, that answered your question, if that's what you're asking about.
All right, another great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, Dana, did you want to say something? Sorry.
No, it does. In my situation, I've actually had the opposite problem where my salary's been here and now I have to go here, and getting people to understand my value here because the job market in Florida is here. And I was with a company that paid very well. So I actually have the opposite problem of I've gotten priced out of a lot of jobs in South Florida.
Are the levels the same too? Not just the salaries? Like you're going for director to director and the salary's 30% less or whatever? All right. Yeah, that's another, I wouldn't call that unique, but it's not as common as the other way around. I think that I would suggest it's the same answer. You can't undo what you were making. So if you're, right. So we would advocate, and again, this is right now in a minute, we'd have to get a little bit deeper on you, your personality, your capability of talking about it, interest on the type of job. There's a few moving pieces that are more subjective, but generally speaking, I was making $120,000 in my last job, and I recognize that geographies are different, but I'd really be looking for a salary that's commensurate with my experience. I'm sure that whatever your band ranges are equivalent. And then you kind of see where it goes, and then for you and anyone else, you have a choice to make. Do you keep going down that path, or do you hold out? Yeah.
Okay.
It's tricky, no doubt.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Jessica.
Awesome. So now let's move on to job search. So Alan told you about some great tips to make your resume more effective. So now what do you do with that resume? How do you use it to apply to jobs? So we're going to talk about a three-pronged approach today: posting your resume online, applying to open positions, and networking. So first, posting your resume online. So most of you know about the major job boards: Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Monster, Employ Florida, if you're in Florida. So these have the option to create a profile and post your resume. And then you can also apply to jobs. So I would encourage you to do both. So creating a profile and uploading your resume allows employers to find you. So from a recruiting standpoint, I've used this function to find candidates. So they maybe hadn't applied to a posting I made, but I was able to find them through their profile. So make sure you upload that. We do get questions occasionally from folks that are concerned with their employer seeing their profile online on one of these job boards. That can happen. It's incredibly rare. So it is something to think about, but it is very rare for that to happen. And then when you have an updated resume, make sure you refresh it in the system, update your profile. So you might have had a new responsibility at work you just added to your resume, or you might have just completed a training or certificate program and put it on your resume. So always add that and refresh your resume in the system. And then I would also encourage you to create job alerts. So, if you're looking for marketing manager positions in Orlando, Florida, you can create an alert like that, and you can get alerted every time there's a match. Apply to open positions. So think about what companies that are local you would want to work for. So think about your network as well. There might be someone that works at those companies, and there might be an employee referral program, and they can refer you. Referrals are usually looked at first. As a recruiter, I always looked at the employee referrals first. Some company websites allow you to upload your resume, even if there's not a posting for you to apply for. And like the job boards, this allows them to look for relevant candidates when something does become available. And consider registering with a staffing agency. So this is a great option. They have a lot of full-time permanent work, as well as other types of work. You might be open to contract work, part-time, seasonal. So keeping an open mind and considering partnering with a staffing agency can open up your options as well. Networking. So this call is an incredibly great example of the power of networking. So several of you that joined today, I met through networking. So that's incredible. And you are all networking with each other just by introducing yourself and being on this call. You're networking with more people than you knew before you joined. So make sure you're getting active on LinkedIn. Join a user group in your industry if you can as well. Chamber of Commerce has lots of great events. Ribbon cuttings are a great event. They're usually free and open to the public. You can meet a lot of great people in your community from all different businesses. Attend a job fair or learning event sponsored by CareerSource. So if you're not familiar with CareerSource, I would definitely look them up as well. They have lots of great free resources for job seekers. And just always be mindful when you're meeting people, making connections. There might be someone that can connect you to a job. You never know. So important thing here, the pro tip, I really want to emphasize. So joining a group is not enough. You need to really be active. So if you're in a networking group, show up every week. Get active where you can. Do they need someone to manage their social media and you can do that? Is there something you can do? Can you provide value to the other people in the group? So by being active and continuing to show up, people are going to recognize you and they're going to remember you, and you have that rapport. So if they think they have an opportunity that they hear about, they're going to think of you and refer you. Now, keys to the job search. Alan and I have a lot of candidates come to us for help, and they're applying to lots of jobs and not hearing anything, hearing very little. And often we find that they're applying for jobs they're not really qualified for. So a few things to ask yourself as you look at the job postings. Are you qualified? Do you have the required education, years of experience and type of experience? And then, are you interested? Can you and would you do this job? Applying to postings that you're really qualified for is going to be a better use of your time than just applying to everything. So really, there's definitely not a best way to find a job. It really needs to be a blended approach, and try different things until you find something that works. You can always change course and try something new. So I hope these were some useful tips for you. And I'll take a minute here to stop if there's any questions.
No, not at the moment, Jessica.
Great, thank you, Beth.
Hey, Jessica, I got a private chat from someone.
Sure.
They want to know about applying for a job when your current supervisor is not wanting to let you go to another position or company. How do you explain checking that you do not want your current employer to be contacted? So that's really a two-part question for those of you that are currently employed and not happy where you are and looking for another job. There's Jessica referenced before about posting your resume online. You're on the grid all of a sudden, so be careful with that. People may find out that you're looking. The other part of it is every application you complete, most applications you complete have a question that allows you to check a box, may we contact your previous employer? You want to check no. Doesn't mean they have to abide by that, right? As soon as you fill out an application, and that's important to know for the person who asked this question, as you apply to jobs, as you put yourself out there, you're out there. So if you're in a current position, just know that you're taking those steps. They're important steps, and it's how you're going to go ahead and get the new job. But there's no law, there's no preventive medicine, there's nobody you can sue if somebody does that. If somebody calls your previous employer and says, hey, so-and-so's interviewing, what do you think? You got to be careful with that. So it's the best thing you can do is first of all, talk to somebody internally about it. And if that's just not an option, take the risk. It's a low risk. Jessica mentioned that before, but there's really not much more you can do other than be your own best self and do the best you can to apply to jobs that are relevant and meaningful, so that if it does happen that it gets out there, you're at least on the path to something productive. Thank you.
Great question. All right, so we'll move on to our last module of the day, best practices. So day of the interview. If I was only allowed to give you one tip today, if we only had time for one thing, it's be on time. If you're not on time to the interview, you know, the rest of the interview is just going to be doomed. So, but I do want to dive a little bit more into what be on time looks like. So we suggest being 5 to 15 minutes before the scheduled interview time. So less than 5 minutes might be cutting it a little too close. You know, you don't know if you have to go through security, if it's a big company with security, and more than 15 minutes can be too much. So I had a candidate that I was interviewing in the past, and they arrived an hour early to the interview. So, you know, I had something scheduled before. I wasn't able to rearrange my schedule, so they were in the lobby for an hour, and our receptionist basically had to entertain them. So you don't want to make it uncomfortable for the interviewer by being too early. And then receptionist. So I definitely always ask the receptionist how the candidates acted when they came in for the interview, if there's anything she wanted to tell me. And occasionally they were rude, or she did have something to point out. So just be mindful that you're interviewing from the moment you get out of your car. During the interview, you know, you might want to bring a padfolio with a pad of paper. You can write down the people's names who you're interviewing with, you know, have any relevant information in there, and bring extra copies of your resume. About a week ago, I was interviewing a candidate. I left his resume on my desk, and he had one to hand to me. So that was very helpful. Don't appear desperate. So we all know this is an incredibly difficult job market right now. But you really want to not appear desperate. So the reason I say this is because the employer wants to believe, again, I said it earlier, they want to believe that you really want this position at their company. This is something you're seeking out because you really want to work there. You're not just going to take any job. So 3 C's. These are great things to remember during the interview. They could be a great thing to jot down and say to yourself or look at right before you go into the company. Cool, calm, and confident. That's how I want you all to project yourself in your interviews. You know you can do the job. You got this interview because you're qualified, so you need the interviewer to believe that too. Thank you notes. I get asked about thank you notes a lot. So I recommend sending an email within 24 hours of the interview. If you interviewed with multiple people, address each person separately, separate email to each person you interviewed with. And then a couple points I want you to hit in that email. Thank them for their time. They took time out of their schedule to interview you. Pick something that stood out. And reiterate that you remain interested and look forward to hearing back. And then sign with your name and your contact information. So if there's any questions, they have your number right there to pick up the phone and give you a call. Now, don't give the interviewer an action. So an example of this is, you know, when will I hear back from you? So interviewers have lots of candidates at the same time. They're trying to manage the process and get the feedback and get back to you. So this is not the appropriate place to give them an action like that. Now, if you haven't heard back within a week, I'd follow up by email or call. And then another week, I'd follow up again. I wouldn't do more than 3 touch points before moving on. If you have not been communicated with, I think you need to ask yourself if this is really a place you want to work. So a lot of you are in the interviewing process. If you want to drop in the chat if you're familiar with ghosting, have any of you been ghosted during the job search process? So you're interviewing and then you just stop hearing back. You no longer hear anything. So this is something I've been hearing a lot from candidates. But it also happens on the other side. So we do have candidates that are no longer interested in the position. They might have got a job elsewhere and they ghost the employer. So this is something you really don't want to do. It's not the right thing to do. And you would be surprised. You may encounter that hiring manager again in your career. I have seen candidates when I was recruiting that worked at other companies I worked at. So you always want to leave on a good note, not burn any bridges. So ghosting does happen by both employers and employees, and we really want to not do that from either side. All right, and I will have Alan close us out here.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so that's the presentation, y'all. Feel free to jump in. We have time to answer questions. We're right at butting up against 2 o'clock, and we promised we'd be done by 2. But my team is going to stay on a little bit longer if you have questions. I do want to add, as you all think about things like, and we get these questions all the time. So I know Patrick was like a quickie. Yep, I've been ghosted in the chat. Well, and this is not about Patrick, but this is what we hear, right? Well, it's not about whether or not you've been ghosted. It's about you not ghosting someone else. And I'll tell you, we flip that around. Jess, will you go back to that last slide, please? Just leave that one up. We go back. And when we teach managers, we teach them the same thing that we're teaching you. Do not ghost the candidates because it comes back around all the time. And so I just want you to kind of know that it does go both ways, but this is, go back to the last slide, the HR Office Saver slide, and then make it on the presentation mode. So everybody just has the information if they want to contact.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I want you to recognize that while you're thinking, well, they do this to me, they don't get back to me, or what was the other one that Jessica was talking about? The follow-ups, right? Or the thank you notes. Nobody ever sends me a thank you, they don't follow up with me. That's all true. That is absolutely true. The entire recruiting, hiring, staffing process is crazy corrupted. You don't do your part, they don't do their part. It's a whole bunch of miscommunication. Did you know that on average, you're only going to hear back from 10% of the applications you do? So if you apply to 10 jobs, you're only going to hear back from 1. That's the statistics. So for those of you that are hearing all these things today, like you're going through, well, what more can I do? Or they're not doing their part. That's true. But you have to control your controllables. Think about what you can do to be a better candidate, because that's all you can do. You can't control who shows up for the interview on their side. You can't control how many jobs they post. You can't control who sees your resume, but you can control what your resume looks like. You can control answering the phone professionally or the email professionally. You can control writing a thank you note in a day or 2. You can control not badgering someone if they haven't gotten back to you. You can control not ghosting. So think about the things that you can do as a candidate to make you a better job seeker, and that'll make you more comfortable in the job search process. And we hope that that's what we shared with you today to kind of giving you that kind of information. So let's go back. Yvette, were there any other questions in the chat?
Yes, well, we have 2 questions, but one was actually just saying thank you. I just had an interview. Maria just had an interview today, and thanks for the information about the thank you note.
Awesome.
Yes, and for Elizabeth, she said, during my last interview, they recorded it. How long do companies typically retain this? I would like the opportunity to interview again.
Yeah. You know, there's a law that I think it's 2 years is the max they can keep it. So they probably keep it somewhere, but I think, are you also asking how long they keep it and maybe look at it, Elizabeth?
Well, what happened was, I mean, it was almost like an hour interview, and the last 20 minutes when he asked me the behavioral questions, he asked me permission to record it. And he said the purpose was so that if I applied for other positions within the organization, they would be able to utilize that and forward that on to other hiring managers. So I agreed, of course, and like I said earlier, I blew the interview. I know I did. And now I've got this bad recorded interview that every time I've applied for several other positions within the organization, I feel like they're just forwarding that terrible interview, and it stinks. And I did write him and ask him how long it would be in the system, and he didn't respond to that. But he did respond to me nicely, and I asked him after the first interview too to give me some feedback, that I was open to feedback on what I might have done better. And he vaguely did. I mean, he was very nice. I mean, but I just can't get past the fact that now I've got this video that is horrible, and
Right.
that's what he's passing around the organization.
Right. All right, so I can't answer how long they're going to keep it or not keep it. Every company does something different. He may move on. He may forget to send it. It may never get sent anywhere. It may just be a thing that they do. I mean, every company does it a little bit differently. From a storage perspective, it's probably a couple of years. So I would tell you, so part of the thing, when we get hired to help, at least half my job is talking people off of a ledge, right? So I've done this awful interview and I don't know what to do now. I will tell you what I'll, just generally speaking, and hope this helps, it's done. There's nothing you can do about it. So what you can do, going back to controlling your controllables, and this goes to everyone else on the call, if you have a bad interview and you know it was a bad interview, and in your case, Elizabeth, it was actually recorded, so it makes you feel even worse. But the fact is, it's there. So all you can do is keep applying, control what you can control, look for jobs that matter, apply, put your best face and best foot forward, do the best you can, and then let the chips fall where they may, and look for other jobs, right? I know you want to work at this company, it's important, right? So I know this is kind of an obvious thing when I say it, but it's really important that you just accept what's done, because you can't undo it, and learn from it. So now the next time you go into an interview, and if they're going to record it, I'll bet you're spot on, or at least you remember what it was like the last time. But unfortunately, that's not something you can control, nor can I give you any real information on how long they'll keep it. I can tell you that practically speaking, when I was in the corporate world, even when we recorded things, we rarely kept them, partially because people change so often. And especially if it's a bad interview, we don't want that floating around internally. There's liability that the company has by sharing that information. So you're probably not on the hook as much as you think you are, but it's just one of those things. You're just, just take a deep breath and, hug your teddy bear and do the best you can.
Well, thanks, Alan. And that's why I'm here today, because I'm going to be better prepared next time.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And, for everyone else on the call, you're going to mess up, right? You're going to be late to an interview. You're going to, I'll tell you my personal one of my things, I was interviewing at Verizon Wireless. It was actually, they were Bell Atlantic at the time. Not that I'm that old, but I was interviewing for a position. And I was, we coach to check your grooming beforehand. So I'm looking at in the window toward the building, checking my teeth and my nose and my tie and all this stuff. Well, it just so happened that window with the reflective glass was the same office that I was sitting in for the interview that I didn't know. And so I had to sit in front of the interviewer recognizing that, but I didn't mention anything. I just went through the interview because I couldn't control what I had done, but I was able to control how I acted. And I ended up getting another interview out of it. So you never know, and you can't control it. So do the best you can. Yeah. Were there any questions? Before we go there, Jessica put a note in the chat. If you didn't see it, we're going to send you a 2-minute survey immediately. Well, if you haven't already sent it, we're going to send you a 2-minute survey. Please fill it in for us. It helps us give better presentations each time, kind of up our game as much as we can. And also, as I mentioned early on, we're offering a free consultation after. At least 2 of you. Dana, you had an awesome question that's very personal and subjective. Patrick, also very unique to you. Not unique, but it's your issue. Feel free. We would love to be able to help. It's no obligation, no cost, 30 minutes. And if anyone on the call, maybe you're not comfortable with that or don't want it, just send us your resume. We'd be happy to look at it for you. And if nothing else, add you to our network. So other questions or things you want to chat about, or stories. There's an opportunity to kind of learn from each other too. Okay. Well, if that's what we have, I'll go ahead and wrap up the meeting. Thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate you being here. We are here to help. We have a business. So if you're at the point where you really need professional help or you think you do, that's something we can talk about in a free consultation, or even very simply email you information for you to think about. But again, free consultation, no obligation, no nothing except trying to help you be better in the interview process. Feel free to reach out. My phone number, our phone number is on the slide here, and you have Jessica's email from when you registered. So with that, I'll close up the meeting. Thanks everybody for joining. We really appreciate it, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.